Chapter 7 of Gray Lensman by E. Smith. Chapter 7. Kinnison did start his flit, but he did not get far. In fact, he did not even reach his squalid room before cold reason told him that the job was only half done. Yes, less than half. He had to give Boskonia credit for having brains, and it was not at all likely that even such a comparatively small unit as a planetary headquarters would have only one string to its bow. They certainly would have been forced to install duplicate controls of some sort or other by the trouble they had had after Helmuth's supposedly impregnable grand base had been destroyed. There were other straws pointing the same way. Where had those 5 strange thought-screen men come from? Bominger hadn't known of them, apparently. If that idea was sound, the other headquarters would have a spy ray on the whole thing. Both sides used spy rays freely, of course, and to block them was ordinarily worse than to let them come. The enemy's use of the thought screen was different. They realized that it made it easy for the unknown lensmen to discover their agents, but they were forced to use it because of the deadliness of the supposed mind ray. Why hadn't he thought of this sooner and had the whole area blocked off? Too late to cry about it now, though. Assume the idea correct. They certainly knew now that he was a lensman, probably were morally certain that he was the lensman. His instantaneous change from a drunken dock-walloper to a cold-sober, deadly skilled rough-and-tumble brawler, and the unexplained death of half a dozen agents, as well as that of Bominger himself. This was bad. Very, very bad. A flare-lit tip-off, if there ever was one. Their spy rays would have combed him, millimeter by plotted cubic millimeter. They knew exactly where his lens was, as well as he did himself. He had put his tail right into the ringer. Wrecked the whole job right at the start. Unless he could get that other headquarters outfit too, and get them before they reported in detail to Boskonia. In his room, then, he sat and thought, harder and more intensely than he had ever thought before. No ordinary method of tracing would do. It might be anywhere on the planet, and it certainly would have no connection whatever with the Thionite gang. It would be a small outfit, just a few men, but under smart direction. Their purpose would be to watch the business end of the organization, but not to touch it save in an emergency. All that the two groups would have in common would be recognition signals, so that the reserves could take over in case anything happened to Bominger, as it already had. They had him, Kinnison, cold. What to do? What to do? The lens. That must be the answer. It had to be. The lens, what was it really, anyway? Simply an aggregation of crystalloids. Not really alive, just a pseudo-life, a sort of a reflection of his own life. He wondered. Great Klono's brazen teeth and tail. Could that be it? An idea had struck him. An idea so stupendous in its connotations and ramifications that he gasped, shuddered, and almost went faint in the shock. He started to reach for his lens, then forced himself to relax and shot a thought to base. "Gerund, send me a portable spy ray block, quick." "But that would give everything away," protested the Vice Admiral. "That's why we haven't been using them." "Are you telling me?" the lensman demanded. "Shoot it along. I'll explain while it's on the way." He went on to tell the base commander everything that he thought it well for him to know, concluding, "So you see, it's a virtual certainty that I am already as wide open as intergalactic space, and that nothing but fast and sure moves will do us a bit of good." The block arrived, and as soon as the messenger had departed, Kinnison set it going. He was now the center of a sphere into which no spy ray beam could penetrate. He was also an object of suspicion to anyone using a spy ray, but that fact made no difference then. He snatched off his shoe, took out his lens, and tossed that ultra-precious fabrication across the room. Then, just as though he still wore it, he directed a thought at Winstead. "All serene, lensman?" he asked quietly. "Everything's on the beam," came instant reply. Why? Just checking is all. Kinnison did not specify exactly what it was that he was checking. He then did something which, so far as he knew, no lensman had ever before even thought of doing. Although he felt stark naked without his lens, he hurled a thought 3/4 of the way across the galaxy to that dread planet Arisia. A thought narrowed down to the exact pattern of that gigantic, fearsome brain who had been his mentor and his sponsor. "Ah, 'tis Kimball Kinnison of Earth," that entity responded, in precisely the same modulation it had employed once before. "You have perceived, then, that the lens is not the supremely important thing you have supposed it to be?" I mean, the flustered lensman, taken completely aback, was cut off by a sharp rebuke. "Stop! You are thinking muddily. Conduct ordinarily inexcusable. Now, youth, to redeem yourself, you will explain the phenomenon to me, instead of asking me to explain it to you. I realize that you have just discovered another facet of the cosmic truth. I know what a shock it has been to your immature mind. Hence, for this once it may be permissible for me to overlook your crime. But strive not to repeat the offense, for I tell you again in all possible seriousness, I cannot urge upon you too strongly the fact that in clear and precise thinking lies your only safeguard through that which you are attempting. Confused, wandering thought will assuredly bring disaster inevitable and irreparable." "Yes, sir," Kinnison replied meekly, a small boy reprimanded by his teacher. "It must be this way. In the first stage of training, the lens is a necessity, just as is the crystal ball or some other hypnotic object in a seance. In the more advanced stage, the mind is able to work without aid. The lens, however, may be, in fact it must be, endowed with uses other than that of a symbol of identification, uses about which I as yet know nothing. Therefore, while I can work without it, I should not do so except when it is absolutely necessary, as its help will be imperative if I am to advance to any higher stage. It is also clear that you were expecting my call. May I ask if I am on time?" "You are. Your progress has been highly satisfactory. Also, I note with approval that you are not asking for help in your admittedly difficult present problem." "I know that it wouldn't do me any good, and why." Kinnison grinned wryly. "But I'll bet that Warsaw, when he comes up for his second treatment, will know on the spot what it has taken me all this time to find out." "You deduce truly. He did." "What? He has been back there already? And you told me—" "What I told you was true and is. His mind is more fully developed and more responsive than yours. Yours is of vastly greater latent capacity, capability, and force," and the line of communication snapped. Calling a conveyance, Kinnison was whisked to base, the spy ray block full on all the way. There, in a private room, he put his heavily insulated lens and a full spool of tape into a ray-proof container, sealed it, and called in the base commander. "Gerrand, here is a package of vital importance," he informed him. "Among other things, it contains a record of everything I have done to date. If I don't come back to claim it myself, please send it to Prime Base for personal delivery to Port Admiral Haynes. Speed will be of no object, but safety very decidedly of the essence." "QX, we'll send it by special messenger." "Thanks a lot. Now, I wonder if I could use your visiphone a minute? I want to talk to the zoo." "Certainly." "Zoological Gardens?" And the image of an elderly, white-bearded man appeared upon the plate. "Lensman Kinnison of Tellus, unattached. Have you as many as 3 Oglons caged together?" Yes, in fact, we have 4 of them in one cage. Better yet, will you please send them over here to base at once? Vice Admiral Gerund here will confirm. It is most unusual, sir, the graybeard began, but broke off at a curt word from Gerund. Very well, sir, he agreed, and disconnected. Oglongs? The surprised commander demanded. Oglongs! For the oglong, or Redeligian cat eagle, is one of the fiercest, most intractable beasts of prey in existence. It essays more concentrated villainy and more sheerly vicious ferocity to the gram than any other creature known to science. It is not a bird, but a winged mammal, and is armed not only with the gripping, tearing talons of the eagle, but also with the heavy, cruel, needle-sharp fangs of the wildcat. And its mental attitude toward all other forms of life is antisocial to the nth degree. Oglongs, Kinnison confirmed shortly. I can handle them. You can, of course, but... Gerund stopped. This Gray Lensman was forever doing amazing, unprecedented, incomprehensible things. But so far he had produced eminently satisfactory results, and he could not be expected to spend all his time in explanations. But you think I'm screwy, huh? Oh, no, Kinnison, I wouldn't say that. I only... well... After all, there isn't much real evidence that we didn't mop up 100%. Much? Real evidence? There isn't any, the Tellurian assented cheerfully enough. But you've got the wrong slant entirely on these people. You are still thinking of them as gangsters, desperados, renegades, scum of our own civilization. They are not. They are just as smart as we are. Some of them are smarter. Perhaps I am taking too many precautions, but if so, there is no harm done. On the other hand, there are 2 things at stake which, to me at least, are extremely important. This whole job of mine and my life. And remember this, the minute I leave this base, both of those things are in your hands. To that, of course, there could be no answer. While the 2 men had been talking, and while the oglongs were being brought out, 2 trickling streams of men had been passing, one into and one out of the spy ray-shielded confines of base. Some of these men were heavily bearded, some were clean-shaven, but all had 2 things in common. Each one was human in type, and each one, in some respect or other, resembled Kimball Kinnison. Now remember, Gerund, the Gray Lensman said impressively as he was about to leave. They're probably right here in Ardith, but they may be anywhere on the planet. Keep a spy ray on me wherever I go and trace theirs if you can. That will take some doing, as the head one is bound to be an expert. Keep those oglongs at least a mile, 30 seconds flying time, away from me. Get all the lensmen you can on the job. Keep a cruiser and a speedster hot, but not too close. I may need one of them, or all, or none of them. I can't tell. But I do know this. If I need anything at all, I'll need it fast. Above all, Gerund, by the lens you wear, do nothing whatever, no matter what happens around me or to me, until I give you the word. QX? QX, Gray Lensman. Clear ether. Kinnison took a ground cab to the mouth of the narrow street upon which was situated his dock walloper's mean lodging. This was a desperate, a foolhardy trick, but in its very boldness, in its insolubly paradoxical aspects, lay its strength. Probably Boskonia could solve its puzzles, but, he hoped, this ape, not being Boskonia, couldn't. And paying off the cabman, he thrust his hands into his tattered pockets, and whistling blithely, if a bit raucously, through his stained teeth, he strode off down the narrow way as though he did not have a care in the world. He was doing the finest job of acting of his short career, even though, for all he really knew, he might not have any audience at all. For inwardly he was strung to highest tension. His sense of perception, sharply alert, was covering the full hemisphere around and above him. His mind was triggered to jerk any muscle of his body into instantaneous action. Meanwhile, in a heavily guarded room, there sat a manlike being, faintly but definitely blue, not only as to eyes, but also as to hair, teeth, and complexion. For 2 hours he had been sitting at his spy ray plate, studying with ever-growing uneasiness the human beings so suddenly and so surprisingly numerously having business at the patrol's base. For minutes he had been studying minutely a man in a ground cab, and his uneasiness reached panic heights. "It is the lensman!" he burst out. "It's got to be, lens or no lens. Who else could have the cold nerve to go back there when he knows that he has exposed himself?" "Well, get him then," advised his companion. "All set, aren't you?" "But it can't be," the chief went on, reversing himself in mid-flight. "A lensman without a lens is unthinkable, and invisible lens is preposterous. And this fellow has not now and never has had a mind-ray machine. He hasn't got anything. And besides, the lensman we're after wouldn't think of doing a thing like this. He always disappears the instant a job is finished, whether or not there is any chance of his having been discovered." "Well, drop him and chase somebody else then," the lieutenant advised unfeelingly. "But there's nobody nearly enough like him," snarled the chief in desperation. He was torn by doubt and indecision. This whole situation was a mess. It didn't add up right from any possible angle. "It's got to be him. It can't be anybody else. I've checked and rechecked him. It is him and not a double. He thinks that he's safe enough. He doesn't suspect that we're here at all. Besides, his only good double, Fordyce, and he's not good enough to stand the inspection I just gave him, hasn't appeared anywhere. Probably inside base yet. Maybe this is a better double. Perhaps this is the real lensman pretending he isn't. Or maybe the real lensman is slipping out while you're watching the man in the cab," the junior suggested helpfully. "Shut up!" the superior yelled. He started to reach for a switch, but paused, hand in air. "Go ahead, that's it. Call district and toss it into their laps if it's too hot for you to handle. I think myself that whoever did this job is a warm number, plenty warm. And get my ears bunted off with that your report is neither complete nor conclusive of his," the chief sneered. "And get reduced for incompetence besides? No, we've got to do it ourselves and do it right. But that man there isn't the lensman. He can't be." "Well, you'd better make up your mind. You haven't got all day. And nix on that we stuff. It's you that's got to do it. You're the boss, not me," the underling countered callously. For once he was really glad that he was not the one in command. "And you'd better get busy and do it, too." "I'll do it," the chief declared grimly. "There's a way." There was a way. One only. He must be brought in alive and compelled to divulge the truth. There was no other way. The blue man touched a stud and spoke. "Don't kill him. Bring him in alive. If you kill him even accidentally, I'll kill both of you myself." The Gray Lensman made his carefree way down the alley-like thoroughfare, whistling inharmoniously and very evidently at peace with the universe. It takes something, friends, to walk knowingly into a trap, without betraying emotion or stress even while a blackjack, wielded by a strong arm, is descending toward the back of your head. But whatever it took, Kinnison in ample measure had. He did not wink, flinch, or turn an eye as the billy came down. Only as it touched his hair did he act, exerting all his marvelous muscular control to jerk forward and downward with the weapon and ahead of it to spare himself as much as possible of the terrific blow. The blackjack crunched against the base of the lensman's skull in a shower of coruscating constellations. He fell. He lay there, twitching feebly. End of chapter 7.